Hello, and let's talk about the violence in Delhi. The horrific violence that Delhi witnessed earlier this week may have subsided, but the people of the city and the people of the entire country are still shaken. At the end of every series of incidents like this, the media, many of us common people ask the same questions. How did this happen? How did people who were living together for years, for generations, suddenly take up arms against each other, enact so much violence against each other? How did this spontaneous outburst happen? But a study of riots in India, and there have been so many over the years, shows that no riot is an accident. There is no demon which seizes people which suddenly forces them into violence one fine day. Every riot is the result of political, institutional, and economic reasons, among others, which cause them. We'll be discussing more about this, but first, let's take a quick look at the developments over the past 24 hours. The Home Ministry has said that no major incident has taken place in Northeast Delhi in the past 36 hours. Meanwhile, the official death toll has risen to 42. 48 FIRs pertaining to clashes, loss of lives, property, etc. have already been registered, and many more are likely to be registered in the next couple of days. The police has detained or arrested 514 suspects for questioning so far. Further arrests will be effected in the course of the investigation, the Home Ministry has said. Aam Aadmi Party leader Tahir Hussain was suspended from the primary membership of his party on Thursday evening. This is after he was charged with murder and arson in connection with the death of Ankit Sharma, an Intelligence Bureau employee. No FIRs have been filed against BJP leaders, on the other hand, for alleged hate speech. The Delhi High Court on Thursday gave the police 4 weeks to take a call on this matter. On Wednesday, Justice S. Muralidhar had demanded an answer within 24 hours. Justice Muralidhar, who heard the petitions on the Delhi violence on Wednesday and slammed the Delhi police over continuous violence, has been transferred to the Punjab and Haryana High Court. President Govind ordered a transfer. To talk more about some of the issues we discussed earlier, as in what is exactly the context of this violence, we have with us Anindya Chakraborty. Hello Anindya, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Prashant.
So there are many aspects to a riot, and over the past few days we have examined some of them. There's a question of the state, of course, the kind of signals it sends when an incident like this happens.
Yes.
And there's also, of course, the questions of realities on the ground. Maybe sometimes very hyper-local issues which actually tend to spark certain, and of course there's rhetoric at the national level, so many angles. But one of the angles that we generally often go into much later or don't even go into is the question of, a very basic question actually, and it may be difficult sometimes to evaluate, but who is a rioter? As in, what is the kind of conditions on the ground that say
that convert someone into this kind of person?
Exactly. So you have been doing some writing and thinking about it. So we'll talk about
it. You know, one of the things that I found difficult to find this time, and as you were saying, that probably more difficult because there's so much hatred for the media, so much distrust for the media on both sides, that it's been very difficult for journalists to actually talk to the people who are out there with those sticks and stones and guns. We know a lot of guns being used there in Northeast Delhi. But you can create probably a profile from whatever you can see in the videos. And I've spoken to a lot of reporters who are out there on the ground reporting. And one of my former colleagues actually got beaten up. So he told me that the people around him were all young. Not more than 30, all between 20 to 30. And if you look at the footage that you see, most of them are like that. And many of them were drunk. I mean, not on just religious fervor, you know, hatred. They were literally drunk. They were reeking of booze. And they were very aggressive. They had collected, many of them, in many places you see, had planned and therefore had these motorcycle helmets on their head. So there is clearly some sort of an organization happening. But also, many of those who were killed, if you look at those stories, because we've got stories of people who were killed, you will find that their families say that they'd gone out to get milk, were coming back, or were on their way back from work. Right? So-and-so worked as a daily wage laborer, was on his way back from work, got shot while he was trying to hide. There are many such stories. So the chances that someone who has daily work is going to go out to riot is very low, because we know the condition of the economy right now. No one can afford to give up a day's wages unless they're actually being paid for rioting, which I don't think has happened this time. So that's the first thing we know. So they're unemployed. Now here is a very striking figure. I took some data from CMIE, because you know that the government of India obviously is only fond of one kind of data, which is 4G or 3G kind of data, right? Now, and that gives you a very striking piece of data. In Delhi, young men between the age of 20 to 24, right? There are about 15 lakh of them. 7 lakh are either studying or for some reason are not out there looking for jobs. 8 lakh are looking for jobs. 4 lakh out of them, Prashant, don't have work. They're looking for jobs. That's half the number of people who are looking for jobs, young men who don't have work. I'll increase that to 20 to 29. And we know that what happens is that people in the early part of their 20s or late teens, those who start working, they think that I'm not going to take this job because I'm going to look for a better job. Maybe they've studied more than their parents, often their fathers, because in many cases the mothers are not. And the father might be a daily wage worker or a driver or something somewhere, and the son doesn't want to do that, right? So he wants something better. By the time he's crossed 25, there's pressure on him to get married, so they start taking whatever job is available. So a lot of times unemployment is not because there's no job. A lot of times it's not the job that they want, right? Because you've been to college and now someone's telling you to basically cut garment cloth. You don't want to do that, right? But you might have to take it up when you're 25. So that unemployment rate falls. But even then, it's about 16-17% between 25 to 29. And 20 to 29 years, young men in Delhi, 3 out of every 10 is unemployed. So you think about it. 10 young people, friends, right? Sitting together at a place, right? In the evening, maybe having 7 of them can talk about what their work is. Maybe 3 of them say, my work is terrible, I don't like it. But 3 have nothing to say. Right? They're unemployed. When they go home, their father tells them that, why don't you just I'll pay you. Become an Uber driver. Let's get a car. Or do delivery. All these boys are doing delivery all over the place with Zomato and all that. Why can't you do that? Son doesn't want to do it. He's going out. He's probably playing cricket somewhere, sitting around. A lot of TikTok videos all over Delhi. If you go, they're making that. They're unemployed, angry, frustrated. And anything can spark, a small spark can become a fire. So that's the basic part of this. But you also wanted to, in a sense, get a sense of what is happening in Northeast Delhi. Very difficult to actually get proper data, but we are now going to look at the anecdotal evidence here. And people have reported there for a long time, including my friend Ravish Kumar of NDTV, who has done a lot of reportage, and he got me some information. It's not original, and that information is that most of the people here are ready-made garment factory people. So there are about 500 to 700 ready-made garment factories here who make, and in Lakshmi Nagar and in Welcome Colony, there are big garment mandis which send it to across India. Now, anecdotally we know, right? I might be wrong here, and maybe this is a prejudice, that in North India, tailoring is a part where Muslims are at least at par as Hindus. Maybe more than what you see otherwise, right? And so garment factories are disproportionate in terms of population, owned by Muslims, and a lot of Muslim workers there. This is a job that maybe a lot of Hindu, especially upper caste, young men don't want to do. So you see that there are these Muslims who are self-sufficient, not making a huge amount of money, because I also heard that in these places, it is apparently one of the most densely populated areas of the world. And in some places, to a single room, there are 20 to 25 people who live. So they take turns to sleep, right? And we know this in most of the outskirts where working populations live in Delhi. Now, they are kind of have a cycle of going to a garment factory. There's cutting, washing, putting buttons, stitching. And in many places, 20 to 25 people work in single factories. In some places, you'll see there are these 4-story buildings where there are 50 people working. Another part of the place is a big tire and spare parts, and you'll find a lot of mechanics. Cars go for being fixed. The pejorative term that the right wing uses against Muslims on Twitter. It's called Puncture Wala. You must have heard that.
Right.
Again, it is associated with Muslims. The work of being a mechanic and doing that work. So, if you look at it, it is possible, again, very difficult to know, possible that Muslims are employed, not very lucrative, but have a higher level of employment here than Hindus. Again, I don't know whether this is true, but if I look at what is being produced here, garments and, this entire tire retreating and we know that their entire market was burnt down by a Hindu mob, right? So why did they target it? Right in Gokulpuri, right behind it, there was a police station. Right. So we know that these are being targeted. We know from pictures that there are these shops in the middle between two shops, which is a Muslim shop, which has been burnt down. Cars owned by Muslims have been burnt down. So they're being targeted, which also tells us that there's this degree of relative affluence. No one is affluent there, but relative affluence, which is something that parts of Gujarat had, if you remember. Right,
exactly.
So the anger that I'm sitting here, I don't have a job, and within that, there is WhatsApp, there is mainstream media, there are primetime anchors who are telling you that Muslims are ghuspaitiye. They're infiltrators. They're vermin. Right? Amit Shah in his rally uses such terms. Right? And they tell you that we have to bring in a law to control population, which is what? It is a code word for saying Muslims have 4 wives, they have 25 children. We know about that famous speech, right? Which was unke 4, hamare 4 और उनके 5 और 25. Right? हमारे 2 और 4 और उनके 5 और 25. Right? We know that this is a fake, completely false thing. But does the average person know that? No, they don't. So it is a very easy ground which has been created over 6-7 years, where the Muslim is seen as an enemy, right? And there is also a sense that if we go out and take it over, if we attack them, the state is with us.
Exactly right.
The state is ours, right? So there is on the ground these unemployed people, frustrated, angry. Many of them probably are bodybuilders, right? Because a lot of spare time. I mean, I have spare time, but I have spare tires too. But the point is that, so there is this machismo, right? There is the fervor of religious hatred. There's a hatred against the other. And there's also a sense that if you say anything against the state, you must be anti-Hindu because the state is Hindu.
Exactly.
Right? So what that does is that when they sit, when these Muslim people, Muslim young men actually aren't doing that, but you'll see there are young women, right? When they sit on dharna, what is the sense? That these people, if they're anti-state, against a law, they must be against me. Right. They must be removed from here.
Right.
So it actually doesn't take much to start a riot.
Right. And to sort of build on the question of the unemployment you were talking about. So has this always been an issue as far as you see with Delhi, or is it a much more recent development?
No, I think that Delhi urban unemployment has increased dramatically in the Modi years.
Right.
It has always been one of those higher unemployed places, but unemployment has increased dramatically across India.
Of course.
Right? The data says. Now we know that the Modi government has shelved every plan to give you any such data till they can work out a methodology by which the data looks good. Right? So that is taking time to work out that methodology. But private CMI's data shows us how unemployment has increased across the country. And Haryana and Delhi are one of the worst. Right? They're one of the worst, and Western UP.
Right.
These are all, so we know that during the riots, people have been brought in from Loni.
Right.
Right. So one of the things that happens when you're unemployed, but there is a degree of affluence somewhere, is crime increases quite significantly. Northeast Delhi, which is a great place for these kinds of trade. It's a kind of trading hub. It has manufacturing, a lot of these small factories, as we call it, right? Is also the place with the highest murder rate. Again, this is information that I've got from crime reporters. And this is not the kind of murder where a husband kills a wife or a wife kills a husband with a table knife or plans and poisons them.
Right.
This is a full gang war movie style, where a person comes, 2-3 people come on bikes and fire 100 rounds. So there are two gangs here, big gangs, Chenu and Nasir gang in this area, and they each have hundreds of people working for them.
Right.
We know what happened after the 93 Mumbai blast, right? The gangs, which were actually quite secular, suddenly got split into Hindu-Muslim gang.
Right.
I don't know whether that has happened in Northeast Delhi over the past few years. It is not unlikely, right? Because of the communal kind of polarization that has taken place.
Right.
The communal polarization, even in the Delhi elections, actually worked the most here. So the 7 seats.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The map shows that, right?
Yeah, the 7 seats, if you look at the total vote share, AAP has 49% and BJP has 45%. So AAP has slightly less than its overall share, and the BJP has significantly more than its overall share. And maybe AAP would have been 45% unless if Arvind Kejriwal hadn't recited the Hanuman Chalisa. So,
Yeah. But it does look like systematically there has been over the years there's been a gradual. And there's been absolutely one gradual polarization, of course.
Absolutely.
And two, a complete decline in possibilities of employment, no structural efforts made to actually resolve the situation.
And also, it's being told that the reason why you don't have jobs is because Bangladeshis are here.
Yeah.
The reason you don't have jobs is because Muslims have too many children.
Right.
That's the answer you get all the time when you ask a person, what is the reason? Because this is the overwhelming discourse in the public space. This is what is being spread not only through social media, not only by politicians, but by journalists.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much, Arvind.
Thank you.
Another key question that the past couple of days have raised is that of institutions. Where are the institutions that are supposed to maintain peace in society, to protect the integrity and bind people together? Why have these institutions failed? Yet again, this is not a case of a sudden abdication of responsibility by these institutions. This is actually a long-drawn process. And to talk more about this, we have with us analyst Gautam Navlakha. Gautam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Prasad.
So Gautam, we have seen the NSA has been deputed to handle the situation in Delhi. And you already written about it, how it's a very ironic situation, so to speak, that the National Security Advisor, whose mandate is really not to, say, deal with issues in a particular part of a particular city, is being assigned to this. And this is accompanied the fact that in the media, among people on the ground, there is a general sense of complete loss of faith in the institutions that are supposed to protect their very basic rights. So how do you see this situation coming up in the first place? And what are the processes that have led to where we are today?
Well, one can go back to the transfer of power in 47 and the Constitution, and the fact that the Indian Police Acts and rules and laws were never changed in tune with our Constitution, because once we got in 1950 our Constitution, it should have brought the Police Acts, which were formulated under the colonial era, should have been dispensed with. Police should have been transformed from being a model as a paramilitary force in defense of the British Empire to one which was a community police, which inspired trust and faith in people and confidence that they would be there now for once now. The police will be there to protect their life and liberty. That is one part of it, and that is a long-standing problem we had to deal with. But notwithstanding that, and even with that limitation in mind, it is still possible under the standard operating procedure that all police have of dealing with riotous situation. They could have brought this situation under control within less than 24 hours. But what we have seen, Prasant, is very clear evidence of the fact that the police administration in Delhi and elsewhere in BJP ruled states in particular, they become so biased, so partisan, that it's brazenly displayed. And this brazen display of bias means that that institution which is meant to protect life and liberty of the citizen actually has become a force which sides with the perpetrators or the ruling party members, wings at hooligans if they belong to the ruling party, and which is what happened in Delhi. We have seen this build-up for quite some time. It began with the attack on the university against the students.
Exactly.
Either acts of omission or commission by the police. One has already talked about it. Then the manner in which they went after certain sections of the people while ignoring the activities of others. This has brought about a situation where I think people feel helpless. They can't trust, they can't turn to the police because you don't know that even if you ask them to come, whether they will actually foist a false case against you. This can also happen. I mean, can you imagine that people who were protesting peacefully for more than 70 days, and there was not a single incident from their side of any act of hooliganism, are the ones who are being targeted and attacked. In addition now, when the police has now been brought on the streets and they've been given the orders, which they were not given for 96 hours, so that the mobsters could carry on with whatever they wanted to, are now targeting everyone. And it's very clear, given the nature, the bias, that their main targets would be the Muslims, the minorities, or those Hindus who are against Hindutva. And that is the fear, because if you look at the pattern of what has happened, and we'll soon realize from the number of arrests, once the figures come out and details come out, which way it is going, that same bias will be affected. Now, once the institutions collapse, Prashant, then we have seen it in 1984 also. Once people lose faith and they believe that neither the police, which is mandated to heed the complaint of a person who has been aggrieved, if they refuse to file an FIR, we saw that a sitting judge of the High Court was overnight transferred to enable the High Court Chief Justice to come out with an order which was in line with what the government and the police wanted. That everything gets delayed, that they are not forced to file cases against FIR complaints against members of the ruling party, Bharatiya Janata Party, who were instrumental in instigating trouble and were party to the design that we see being enacted on the streets of Delhi in the last few days.
Yes. So the other aspect also being the fact that it also gives some of these mobs the confidence that, you know,
they enjoy impunity.
Exactly,
nothing.
Exactly.
I mean, if Kapil Mishra knows that he's not going to, there is going to be no FIR, that in fact the Solicitor General and the Home Ministers and the police are standing by him and defending his right to abuse, incite violence and get away with it, why would he feel any need to correct himself? He'll carry on along the same lines.
The other key question which is also interesting to look at is a different sort of institutional issue, so to speak, is also the kind of response that this issue has been receiving globally, and the fact that the Indian government is in some sort of a firefighting mode right now. So what are your impression of this?
I think it's so brazen, Sant. It was so brazen, and it is being played out in front of media, and I mean everybody is witnessing it and listening to what is coming out. It was impossible for the international media and concerned citizens abroad who are mindful of what is happening and are looking at what is happening, to have ignored what was taking place in Delhi. And there have been very sharp comments, not just the media, the Western media, for whatever bias, their reportage of this and their highlighting this issue has been quite commendable, I must say. But it's other organizations and institutions. It's not just United Nations. It's different institutions in United States that have come out against it. It's the Organization of Islamic Countries that India was tom-tomming as siding now with India against Pakistan, has come out and condemned the attack on Muslims. So this is something which is, and it's increased. The number of comments, the number of statements, the number of anguished statements issued by various institutions have increased. And all Ministry of External Affairs is now doing is firefighting.
Exactly.
And this is also brings out that how domestic, if you are unable to have an inclusive vision of India, and you are partisan and biased, and they're targeting minorities or those who disagree with the ruling dispensation, they are being targeted or false cases are being foisted upon them, then it becomes, it's very difficult for the same government to sell itself as representing the world's largest democracy. Please remember that the Indian government is now pitching, amongst other qualifications that cite of Indians for H-1B visa, they're saying that India's democratic credentials should give them an edge over others to allow them to be given H-1 visa over, say, Chinese or other people from other countries. After this incident, I think Indian Ministry of External Affairs may have to redo and rethink and reshape its approach, because democratic credentials are certainly not what India can sell to the world.
Thank you so much, Gautam. That's all we have for this episode of Let's Talk. We'll be back on Monday at 3 p.m. with the latest news developments of the day. Until then, keep watching NewsClick.